Okay, we are at the top of the hour. So let's get started to respect everyone's schedule and everyone who joined on time. So welcome to this last but one study group meeting. Next week we are going to have the last one. So let me start sharing my screen. And minimize this one. So today's topic is the quality management support, generating and maintaining records. Again, as usual, a couple of words about the exam. The exams start actually next Monday. Time flies. It's incredible. It's starting, but most of you probably scheduled after the annual meeting, which is perfectly understandable. You have time until 26th of April. There are 165 multiple choice questions. 15 are being tested and validated, but you do not know which ones. I don't know which ones. So take every question seriously. You have about 1.5 minutes per question, 3.5 hours in total. If you are not an English native speaker, you may consider purchasing additional time, 1 hour if you are in the test center, and 2 hours if you do it online. We would seriously recommend taking this additional time just in case you stumble in 1 or 2 questions. You are not sure, you need to read it several times to be confident that your understanding is accurate. So this will give you a little bit more comfort and less time stress. The practice exam is free of charge. It's a kind of older one and aging. So if you pass easily, don't think that the real exam is exactly as easy as the practice exam. No, it is not. And you may hear this feedback from people who have already passed the real exam. You may read the testimonials. So don't be overconfident that going through the practice exam easily guarantees that you will pass the real exam. The exam covers 3 areas: FDA 21 Code of Federal Regulations, or CFR, ICH E6, or GCP, and 21 CFR Part 11 Electronic Signatures and Electronic Records. There is nothing related to the newest revision of the ICH guideline, so don't worry about GCP R3. That's not part of the exam. Read all suggested materials in the candidate handbook, all the other resources provided and recommended by the SQA. Read the regulations. You are not going to be asked about which paragraph talks about this or that. No, it's not about memorizing the regulations. It's about knowing what they apply to, what is out of scope of the regulation, what is the intention of the regulation, and basically, I would say the spirit of the regulation, what it requires, because regulations, they are not recipes for cooking a nice meal. They tell you what you should comply with, what are the expected ways of solutions and answers and activities, and so on and so forth. But each organization may apply them differently. So for the exam, we recommend take the most conservative approach to the regulations. Your company may be doing other things. You may have your risk assessment in your company, your applicability. So you may achieve the same results in more than one way, in compliance with the regulations. But for the exam, just stay conservative and read the tips for your peers. Here you have the hyperlink. It will take you directly to the resource page. You need to scroll completely down to see what your colleagues have written and the testimonials from the feeling when they took the exam. Watch for keywords. Keywords could be also some small words like not, what should not be done. So don't skip this and answer the opposite. Stay logical. Most of the time you will read a question, and when you read the answer options, you may exclude at least one or two straight away because you will say, no, this can't be the answer. And then you may see just two and say, I'm not sure which one. I would like both of them combined. That would be my answer, but there is nothing like a combination. So if you are really not sure and if you don't know, take your guess because you have 50% chance to get it right. If you leave it not answered, then you are missing the chance and it's worse than if you take the guess. And last but not least, do not second guess your answers. Don't go back and start thinking, is it really so? And maybe I should change something. I make most mistakes when I go back and try to second guessing my own answers. So today's topics, generating and maintaining records. So we are going to talk about processes for physically capturing and documenting observations, comments, recommendations, actions, and other quality assurance activities. I really wonder what's going on, why the slide appeared blank. Give me a second. Yeah, this should show up. So my apologies. This. So keep in mind similarities and differences between electronic, paper, and hybrid records. Paper, you have certain way of corrections, like never obscuring the original entry. By hand initialing any corrections, getting the correct answer, and then putting, if it's not self-explanatory, putting the reason for the correction. If it's electronic, typically the system defines how the corrections are going to be made, and you don't need to be worried about obscuring the initial entries because everything should be kept in audit trails. Having said that, all the systems, electronic systems used in clinical trials, as we talk about GCP, should have audit trails and should be duly validated. But we are not going to talk about validation. It's just a note that you do not need to be concerned about visibility of previous answers or corrections. That should be all captured. If it's not, then the system should never be qualified for use. And you have audit-generated records like plans, observations, reports, certificates, correspondence, CAPAs, and so on and so forth. They may be residing in different systems. I've seen several times with my auditees, like audit agenda is generated in one system, but CAPAs are residing in another system. Correspondence, of course, is by email. Observations could be in the same system as the agenda, let's say Viva Quality, for example, but not necessarily so. So companies may have one suite of systems from one provider that is part of the whole electronic quality management system. Everything is in its place. Or they may have solutions from different vendors, so which can be sometimes challenging because these systems typically don't talk to each other. And sometimes information needs to be transferred somehow, sometimes even written more than once. Other type of records are quality training and staff development activities. Again, that could be part of like development activities and trainings, could have their own system, could be maintained by HR, for example, in some organizations, or by dedicated departments, depending on the company, its size, its structure, and so on and so forth. Regulatory visits, inspections, trend analysis records, audit observations, corrective and preventive actions. So to do a trend analysis, the system may be allowing you and giving you tools to do that, or you may use other tools to do that. Really depends on each organization. And all the communications is required by different quality systems, different types of audits, types of organizations, if it's global, regional, local, and so on and so forth. So you have lots of records. And just as a note, although I said that R3, GCP R3 is not part of the exam, GCP R3 replaces the word document with the word record. Just somehow to give a more general title and indicate that it can be electronic, it can be paper, it can be coming from a lab system. So record is the most general name for what we typically call document, or used to call document. Record management has its own life cycle. So it's the creation or receipt, distribution, and use. Active storage when it's used and when people are actively utilizing different methods. Inactive storage, retention, disposition, archival, preservation, and so on. So the whole life cycle should be managed and should be maintained in good shape, because inspectors may be asking for old records of studies completed a long time ago, of your activities done 5 years ago. So make sure that you know where your records are, that you access, that things that need to be presented to inspectors are easily traceable, are easily retrievable. It's part of the expectation of inspectors, and it's part of our responsibilities. Where can things go wrong? Basically, anything can go wrong, as you know, Murphy's laws. And consequences could be quite detrimental. Disclosure of confidential information, breaches, leaks, impossible to verify some. Conclusion, and that's the worst thing, of regulators, that your data and records cannot be trusted. I made such conclusion when I was auditing a pharma affiliate, and I looked at their at the export from their training, electronic training system. It was newly deployed. There were some migrations from previous system, and apparently something was not handled properly because it was a mess. And I could see, like, for example, retaken exam for a particular course. And I knew, because I had to take it myself, that it took at least 15 minutes to watch the materials and at least 5 minutes to complete the quiz. However, I could see the activity completion 30 seconds apart. For the same person, like retaken, there was no way that it could take 30 seconds. Or for another example was, there was a training record for an updated SOP that was updated and released 6 months after the training day. So even we are still not traveling in time that frequently. So finally, I concluded that I can't trust the training records, and I simply stopped looking at them, saying, guys, this is just fun. I don't believe anything I see there. So why should I waste my time looking at it? If this is the conclusion of a regulator regarding data presented for pivotal phase 3 study, that's a disaster, because you can basically repeat the whole study. And it's a lot of money, a lot of efforts, a lot of time. Deviations and non-compliance. Root cause analysis just sits on the surface, does not go deep enough to uncover the real root cause, which also typically means that the corrective and preventive action is not fitting and does not have the possibility or the likelihood to remove the recurrence. And it's practically in every single audit I see. Like root cause analysis ending with human error or technical issue. And the magic panacea that cures everything, retraining of the person who has apparently done it 100 times before correctly, suddenly was not the case, but retraining is the most appropriate action. I always question that. I never get satisfied with something like this, and you should not be. So you need to uncover, when you are doing any kind of analysis for root cause, you need to go deep enough. And when you can't go any further anymore, and you get something real, not just technical error or human error omission, then you know that you are likely at the real root cause, and then you need to start thinking about what can be the corrective action that eliminates or minimizes the chance for recurrence. And can be changing the process, can be redesigning something, can be providing additional tools or steps that were missing in a process. So you may have very different answers if you do your exercise properly. What can also happen is premature destruction, damage, or loss of records. Think about long-term archival. And then if you have, for example, advanced medicinal products and sites, at least one site in the EU, it should be 30 years. That's a long time. And not only its destruction, damage, or loss, it's also the possibility that the file cannot be opened, the record cannot be read, and then it's as good as nothing because the process cannot be reconstructed. Decisions and their justification cannot be presented to auditors and inspectors. I always recall the experience of my friend working in a pharma company in the States. They got the EMA inspection for a study that was completed 10 years before the inspection date. And they moved from paper to electronic, meaning paper CRFs to e-CRFs, from paper TMF to eTMF. And the inspectors were asking, how did you do your risk assessment? Who authorized the decisions? What was the justification? Why you changed halfway through the study? Why didn't you complete the way you started? And they were asking a lot of questions, and fortunately, the organization had answers and had good documentation. But if you don't, you would be just, we don't know, the people are not here anymore. We have no one to ask. And I bet the inspector would not be happy with such an answer. And in the worst case, if something goes very wrong, it can damage the reputation of the company, erode the trust, lead to financial losses, and maybe even kick the company out of business. So records are very important. You know, if it cannot be, if it's not documented, it's just a nice story. Never happened. That's fine. You told me a nice story, but show me the data. So always ask some important, sorry, go back to remove the toolbar, secure my view. So the important questions are, what is the purpose of the record? Is the record required by regulations? What is the criticality? What is the classification? Is it confidential, restricted, internal, public? Does it comply with RQAP+? Do we have certified copies if we don't have the originals? Audit trails and documentation of audit trail reviews. Is your system audit trail user-friendly for a review? How do you document? Do you have an Excel spreadsheet, or the system allows you to do it inside the system? Version control, authorship, review, approval, and so on and so forth. You can read it all here. Availability at the point of use. That's also what interests me. So when people do the respective task or activity, and they want to refer to the relevant SOP, protocol, investigator brochure, whatever it is, do they have it at hand? They should. Because otherwise they are going to try to remember, and memory is deceiving. Especially we are busy, we may have more than one study, sites have more than one study, teams have typically more than one thing they are engaged in. So are you sure you are not confusing one with the other? Are your sites sure? The validation I mentioned already, backups, previous, protection of records, cybersecurity, which is today really very important. Almost every day, I read about some ransomware attacks, cyber attacks, leaks of confidential information from different types of organizations. Now, I'm not referring just to our particular industry, but all the organizations. It's now a kind of, with AI, it's really getting out of hand, because yes, we are trying to use AI to protect our organizations, but also the cyber criminals are using AI to do more advanced attacks. Just this morning, I read there was practically a perfect code that was given to hackers by AI tool in no time, and it was hardly discernible by existing and current protections. So this is worrying. So the cybersecurity, as we deal with confidential data, with study participants' data, and so this is so very important. And change management, always if we need to improve something, the important thing is, how do we manage change? And I would like to stress, as I do at every possible occasion, emails are not suitable records of decisions. You will never find, especially if that's years in the past. So have proper documentation for important decisions, relevant form, something that it can be archived, found, that it's placed in the filing structure, but please no emails.
Camilla, there was a very interesting warning letter a number of years ago that I think it was a manufacturing site. And at the very end of it, it said the FDA inspector had to go in and work with the plant manager's emails because that's where all of the documents were. So I could only imagine how frustrated that inspector would be, and you certainly don't want to have that lead to any type of warning letter for a company.
Yeah. For me, the most scary experience was one of my clients, they are doing bioequivalence studies, which are typically shorter and so on, and more simple. Excuse me. My eye. And their habit was to have one endless email chain per study, with all the attachments at the given time points, with things like protocol, report, this and this and this and that, monitoring, questions, answers. So everything was under one subject title, one endless email chain. And when they asked me to do it that way, I said, like, sorry,
that sounds awful.
Yeah,
Sounds like a nightmare.
I couldn't believe it was the real. And I tried to tell them, okay, how confident are you that you are going to find certain things easily? If you have the same subject, you can hardly use keywords. That's practically impossible. So I said, okay, keep the first part, but in the second part, let it be subject specific, like this is related to audit, this and this and that. So fortunately, they agreed, but I simply refused to comply with that system because that was the most awful thing I have ever seen. So people have strange ideas sometimes, and they think it's easy and good just because they haven't got the first 483 or warning letter that they change their mind. And what is our goal? Well, we want to have good documentation because we want to be able to have supportive evidence that the medicinal products for consumers have been properly tested, the outcomes were good, the decision-making around was transparent. We want the patients, who can be our beloved ones, can be ourselves, tomorrow, after tomorrow, a couple of years' time later, to have good choices for therapists and safe and effective products. That's why we do what we do. That's why I do. So let's now dive into our polls. And let me see our poll. I'm sorry, Lydia, I do not see the polls at all.
No problem. Let me make you a co-host and you should now be able to see them.
You? Yes, I can see it now. So this is session 5. Let me launch the poll. These are questions from the practice exam. There are 5 questions and you have 5 minutes to answer. Read the question carefully, read the answers carefully, take your best answer with a conservative approach, and then when you are ready, just click submit. Half of the people already answered. It's a good start. Now it's coming faster. One more minute. Take your chance. The answers are anonymous. We don't know who answered what. And I see all of you have answered. Excellent. And the time is ending just now. So let me end the poll and share the results. Ladies and gentlemen, can you take it one by one? Maybe Jenny, would you start? How do you
Actually,
see the...
Jenny had to leave at 12:30, she wrote.
Okay. I did not see that. So, thank you. So you may step in, and we have pretty uniform answers. Everybody is in accord with everybody else.
Yeah, I thought these were relatively straightforward, but we'll go with number one. Certified copy means select one, and it looks like all 8 noted a copy that has been verified to have the same information as the original. Once again, as we had talked about, looking at all of the answers, you may be able to delete or put aside 2 of the answers right off the top. So copy of the original has been signed by the PI, printout of an EMR, not necessarily capturing the meaning of a certified copy, at least in my mind. Were there any questions on that one?
Just one comment. In the US, it's quite common that organizations destroy the original. Let's say they have paper original. They create certified copy, scan it, keep the scan because that takes more physical space, and they destroy the original. While it seems that FDA are pretty much okay with that. Let me warn you, the EMA is not. So in case you make a certified copy, it's expected that you do it because somebody else needs that one, but you are still supposed to maintain the origin. So let me just point out this difference, because sometimes these small things are not very obvious, and you cannot easily find it in guidelines or regulations, but it's quite important if you are working globally.
Yeah, and a little caveat on that too is the site usually is the one that if they go fully electronic, anything that's paper, they usually like scan and then put into a system, but they have to have SOPs for that. And it has to be extremely clear what the certification means. I've been to sites that aren't following any really good process, and there's a lot of issues with that. But other sites have really good SOPs, things are certified, they're read, they're, and there's an actual name and a date and a time that it's certified. So
and the scanning should be also tested and validated. So
yes.
it should not be like I'm using my scan app today, and tomorrow we are using the scanner that is here in the office, and tomorrow we will use something totally different. So no, the scanning should be validated, and it should be the same way for all the certified copies if you make it from paper to electronic.
There also should be a good reason why you're making certified copies and where they're going to, not just that you made them and it's certified, but where are they going to? So you know where those documents and why you're doing it.
Good point. Good point, Michael. Yes.
Number 2. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm just going to ask Michael, would you take number 2?
Sure. Let's see. Okay. everybody chose the same answer, which is good. In applying Alcoa principles, everyone involved in clinical trials to ensure the records are, and you have 4 choices, and the correct one is what Alcoa stands for, that it's attributable, it's legible, contemporaneous, original, and accurate. So that's the correct words to go with our favorite acronym for Alcoa.
Just sometimes be sure also what these words mean. And that can be sometimes misunderstood by different organizations. And I even seen one of my auditees, they referred to Alcoa in one SOP in 2 places and in another SOP. And in every single occurrence, the definitions were different, which was quite interesting. And some of them were completely unfitting and like out of, totally away from the meaning. For example, sometimes it's not very clear what contemporaneous really means, and they refer to the system, that the system should capture the information accurately, but that's not contemporaneous, right? Contemporaneous means 2 things actually. It's at the time of the activity, or practically as close to real time as possible. And the second part of this meaning is also correct sequence, that one step is not jumping ahead of each other. So it's the time point related to the activity, and it's the sequence of time points in the logical, correct, stepwise process.
I've also seen protocols where it says data entry can occur up to 3 days or 4 days after the visit. It's that's sort of stretching the definition of contemporaneous, but that's what the protocol says.
Yeah, typically sponsors allow some time for sites, but my best advice is do it either at the same time the activity is done, but okay, if I am an investigator, if I am talking to the study participants, I'm not going to gaze at the computer screen. I'm going to look at the participant when I talk to him or to her. So ideally, I would have my coordinator or nurse taking notes or writing in the computer, whatever. At the time I'm talking to the participant, and then if I have something to add, I will do it the same day. And even that can be tricky if I have group of participants like 10. Am I really remembering everything correctly if I did not take any note myself? Would I not mix Mr. Brown with Mr. Reed or Miss Mary with Miss Juliet? Can I be really sure? So we are sometimes over-reliant, thinking that our memory works perfectly, is very accurate. But every now and then, and more often, I'm reminded that my memory is not working perfectly. And my memory does deceive me. And I think that I recall perfectly clearly, and then I'm presented with evidence that I am not. So I've started to be more careful about what I really remember and what I think I remember.
The other problem at sites is they're seeing multiple patients all day long. And do you remember which value goes with which patient because you saw 8 people today?
Yeah. And could be study and non-study and different studies and so on and so forth. and also answering queries. That can be tricky because queries can be issued a couple of days later, and then I will be getting to answer them maybe a week or 2 weeks after. And if I leave them aging, which many times happens, could be a month after the event. Would I really remember? I need to have perfect records that would help me to reconstruct what was going on, what happened, what were the decisions, and so on and so on. So as you see, records are crucial because it can, if we just don't have good records, we can put the patients in danger, we can compromise the data, the quality could be highly questionable. So contemporaneousness and all these RQAP principles are so very important. They are part of data integrity expectations and also part of data governance, which now has its own specific chapter 4 in GCPR 3, and that's the first time. So being very careful about records and accurate and meticulous, that's the right way. Let's move to number 3. Again, we have uniform answer. Pam, would you take that one?
Yep. Where are the study personnel roles and responsibilities documented at a clinical trial site? So once again, single answer, a list of appropriately qualified persons who are delegated trial-related duties. The industry standard is a delegation of authority log that most sponsors utilize. But once again, it just notes a list. It doesn't exactly have a name of a DOA. So that's one thing that kind of gets tricky sometimes. If you look at ICH E6R2, section 8.0, it notes that there needs to be some form of a list, and when study staff was delegated by the PI to specific duties. So obviously the other answers may be a part of that or a part of the qualification documents, but is not where it's actually kept as a list for the delegated trial responsibilities.
Michael, any further comment on this one? No, I have 2 things. There was just very recently, a couple of days ago, there was a discussion on the clinical specialty section, the Connect page, whether the principal investigator should be on the delegation letter or not. And that was a good one, because although we customarily expect the PI to be included, it's not for the PI to delegate himself. I cannot delegate myself. I need someone in a higher authority who delegates me to something. So do we expect the sponsor to sign for the PI? No, we don't. Basically, that signature part, the confirmation of authorization or delegation, can be even grayed out. But the good thing is that we have the signature of the investigator and the initials of the investigator, so that we can see, okay, this is how it looks like when we, it's like bank model of signatures. When the bank asks you open your account and they say, okay, sign, just we need your model signature. Then if you sign a checkbook, then we know it's your signature. Although, yes, we all know that our signatures are never perfectly identical still. Graphologists can recognize patterns and so on. There is a whole science behind it. So we have the way how the PI signs, how the PI initials, and we have it all in one thing.
Yeah,
The other comments,
to your point about whether the PI should be on that log, if you look at the regulations in ICH, it says the investigator should maintain a list of people to whom he has delegated trial-related responsibilities. It doesn't say, I mean, that would imply that you keep a list of all the other people, not including yourself.
yeah, and also delegation implies oversight. So
Exactly.
that's also why I cannot delegate myself, because then it would mean I'm responsible for overseeing myself and pointing out things to be corrected. So you understand that that does not make too much sense. But there is a point for decentralized trials. And you may have a lot of third parties and home nurses and local labs and so on and so forth. So now the question is, should all of these be included on the delegation log as we know it? And the regulator's answer is no, if these people are performing tasks that are consistent with their job and they do not require protocol-specific training. So if, for example, if a nurse takes blood and takes it to the point of care somewhere where the patient lives, that nurse does not have to be on the delegation log. That does not mean there should be no record where these people are listed, but it can be a separate document, and also the need for GCP training is minimum for them. They may just need to know if something happens, what to do, whom to call, how to report it, how to record it, meaning they witness adverse event or they learn about it for the participant, how to handle that information. But they don't need to be fully trained on GCP. So in these cities, we need to be sure that we know who does what, whether it's part of their normal job, or whether there is anything that is study-specific and may need study-specific protocol-related training that makes all the difference where to record these people and what is the extent of GCP training they should be receiving. Now we have number 4. Pam, would you take this one?
Certainly. During a review of investigational product accountability, the following documentation was available at the site. Sent to site, 50 capsules, distributed to participants, 40 capsules, returned to the sponsor, 5 capsules. What other documentation would allow you to perform full drug accountability? And everybody noted a record of the investigational product destruction, which tells you where the drug finally ended up, and also a record of the number of capsules returned by the participants. So that gives you that missing piece of the 5 capsules would be able to tell you where those were. So good choice. Interesting, 2 of the answers have verbal response. And so that's the first answer and the second answer, thinking about records and permanency, and, verbal response doesn't make any sense for 2 of those. So always thinking of the full record of the IP sent from the sponsor at the site, distributed to patients, back from patients, and then back to the site. The expectation is usually 100% drug accountability from regulatory agencies. So this is very important. Very tedious sometimes as an auditor, but very important.
Yep, and there are a number of warning letters for investigators or departments for if they sell investigational product. That means, okay, they are listed, and don't even think about choosing such an investigator for your study. And why you can exclude also number 3, because of the certificate of analysis. That has nothing to do with any number of investigational product. That tells basically the content, the potential impurities, and what are the excipients, so what is the quantity of the API, the active pharmaceutical ingredient, and so on and forth. So for its composition, it's not anything related to quantity of IP at the site. And again, very uniform. Today, it's perfect uniformity. I've never seen it before, have you?
No, no, that's why I said these were kind of straightforward questions too, but some of the other ones have not been.
Michael, would you take the last one, please?
Okay. Again, we had uniformity in response. So prior to participating in the clinical trial, a potential study participant was instructed by the coordinator to begin washout of the prohibited medication. Participant was then told they will sign the informed consent at the next visit. What key element of informed consent process was missing? And so, well, a couple of these answers may be part of what's a good discussion, but the main point, which the second one, which everybody chose, is before anybody's asking someone to stop a prohibited med and wash out is considered part of study procedure. So they need to have signed and fully executed an informed consent form before doing that. Now, should they have also talked to the principal investigator, and should there have been maybe some blood work done before that? But that would be after signing a consent form. So the first step always needs to be that the subject signs a consent form and is fully executed before you begin anything that would be considered part of study process, including washing out of prohibited medications.
Exactly, before any study-specific procedure. If there are, let's say, complete blood count and blood chemistry done for every single patient who comes to the site, whether they participate or whether they don't participate in a study, it's just a routine, and everybody does the same thing. It's not study-specific. But whatever the protocol asks specifically to be done, then it becomes a study-specific procedure if it's not routine and standard part of the site SOPs, policies, and so on and so forth.
And stopping a current medication would be obviously study related, because they're doing that to be able to be enrolled. So that definitely needs to be after informed consent.
Yes. Let me stop sharing and close this. You will have, again, all the questions. If it got stuck for some reason, does not respond. Never mind. You will have in your handouts, again, the questions with the relevant reference, either to GCP or to regulation. So if you want to read a bit more about that topic, you can go and do so. And we wish you again the best of success in your preparations. We will see you again, hopefully, next week for our last study group meeting this spring. So until then, have a very good week. If you have any questions, then you can definitely post them on your Connect page with the study groups, and somebody will be there to answer and help with it. Thank you all very much. I'm rushing because I have another meeting that I need to initiate. So my apologies for that. And looking forward to seeing you next week.